Marom Yoshev Tila. The translation here is not accurate. It just should be incline your ear from on high. He who is seated on praise, not and listen. The words and listen are there. My mistake. Lishmoa el harina ve'el hatfila. To listen to the song and to the prayer. Rina, I'm translating here as song. And this is the refrain. We're emphasizing the fact that we're coming here specifically on Motzi Shabbos. And that final line, to listen to the Rina and to the Tefillah, the song and the prayer, is the refrain of the Piyut. We say all kinds of other things, and then we say, Lishmoa el harina ve'el hatfila. So there seems to be some sort of distinction being drawn between something called Rina and something called Tefillah. There's prayer component, and there's a song component. And this is poetic, so it could just be synonyms. It may not necessarily be distinct, but I think, as we'll see in a moment, it is. There are two components, there are two elements that are being highlighted here in terms of what we do in Slichot. So let's consider that a little bit further. It seems that it's possible, perhaps likely, that the Paitan is borrowing here on a distinction which we find in Megillat Eicha, from all places. Not necessarily what you're thinking about in terms of joy, but in Megillat Eicha you have this description. It's source number 3. Kumi roni balayla l'rosh hashmurot shivchi kamayim libech nochach pe Hashem si'i elav kapecha al nefesh ololecha atufim berav v'rosh kol chutzot. The first part of the pasuk is what I want to focus on. There's a little bit graphic description. It's Megillat Eicha. Kumi roni balayla l'rosh hashmurot. Arise, and probably in the Eicha context, the most literal context, it's not talking about singing songs, it's talking about crying out, wailing in a song-like way. Arise and do Rina in the nighttime. L'rosh hashmurot, shivchi kamayim libech nochach plei Hashem. And in addition to doing this Rina, in addition to doing this singing, this crying out, also pour out your heart to God, or pour out your heart like water, rather, to God, in the presence of God. So there we also have this distinction. On the one hand, you have something called Rina, and on the other hand, you have Shivchi Kamayim Libech, pour out your heart like water, at some sort of reference to Tefillah. So it's very possible that the Paitan who wrote, the poet who wrote this piyut, which we're going to say, and made this distinction between Rina and Tefillah, is borrowing from the language here in Eicha. He's borrowing from the same distinction that we have in Eicha. Okay, that's step number 2. Step number 3, what does this Rina mean? What does Rina mean? What does it mean to sing out? What kind of joy is it? Is it happy? And if it is happy, then what kind of simcha are we talking about? So in fact, we find there's in Chazal all kinds of descriptions about what this Rina is supposed to mean. Kumi roni balayla, sometimes it's referred to as Talmud Torah, sometimes it's referred to as thanking God for suffering, which is an interesting discussion and a separate discussion in its own right. The Tana Devei Eliyahu, which is here in source number 4, has a series of explanations, 4 or 5 of them. I picked one where he says, Davar achir kumi roni balayla, ein rina nazu ela simcha. Arise, sing in the night. This singing or this crying is referring to joy. It's referring to simcha. And he quotes a series of psukim, we're going to look at them carefully in a moment, about places in Tanakh where it's very clear that the verb rina is associated with joy. We see it, Ko amar Hashem ranu liYaakov simcha, the Omer rani v'simchi bat Zion, cry out or sing out, but not specifically, not in any event, specifically in terms of joy. So this we have, now we've made this connection. This is, just to recap here, we have this reference to simcha. We saw it in the Leket Yosher. He says there's a concept of joy, Slichot night. We're supposed to bank on the joy that we experienced on Shabbos and bring it over into the Slichos. We see this referenced again in the Piyut, Lishmoa al harina al tefillah, which, if we'll accept this analysis, is borrowing from the language in Megillat Eicha, which we see can be associated with joy. So the Piyut itself, one of the things which we will sing, which we will say, also makes this reference to joy. And the two questions we have to define still then are, what kind of joy is this? What is this kind of joy? In Judaism, anthropologists say that societies, civilizations, you can understand more about them by the number of words they have for different things. Like the Inuit have a bunch of different words for snow, because they need to know distinctions between different types of snow. And Jews, in that sense, are sort of like the Inuit of joy. There's a million different words for joy. Sometimes we say them at weddings. Simcha, ditza, gila, rina, chedva. There's all kinds of words that we have for joy, and they all have slightly different meanings. They're not all the same. People try and define what all these different words for joy mean. So what kind of joy is rina? What is the joy that we're supposed to be doing on Slichot night? And then finally, we'll have to define is where does this show up? Where is it part of the Slichot? I mean, we say songs, we say poems, that's nice, but what, in the core of Slichot, where does this joy show up? So I think if we look carefully, that's what we're going to look at in the second side of the page here, at the psukim which were quoted by the Tana Devei Eliyahu, the psukim which were quoted as proof that the word rina talks about joy, we'll see a pattern emerging, we'll get a sense of what kind of joy we're talking about. And source number 5 is the first set of it. He really only quotes one, but from that area, which is the first thing the Tana Devei Eliyahu quoted. And this is a description, this is Yirmiyahu Lamed Aleph. It's important in Rosh Hashanah for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's the Haftorah on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. There's good convergence there. And also, the pasuk, the last pasuk of the Haftorah, which is not on the sheet here, is also one of the psukim which we recite, which are part of the Musaf Tefillah on Rosh Hashanah, part of Zichronot. So here it's describing this relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Bnei Yisrael, which is occurring from a distance, but Hashem is telling us is going to become close very soon. Merachok Hashem nira li, v'avat olam ahavtich, al ken meshachti chesed. God appeared to me from afar, which some Mefarshim say refers to the Navi being exposed to some sort of eternal ancient love that God has for the Jewish people from before. This is Yirmiyahu speaking, but before, from the times of the Avot, maybe before that. Od avneich v'nivneit betulat Yisrael, od ta'adi tupayich v'yatzat b'mechol mischakim, od tit'i kramim b'harei Shomron, nat'u notim b'chilelu. I'm going to build up the country again, the hills of Shomron, and you're going to plant vineyards, and you're going to reap from the vineyards. There's going to be a day when they'll call out from the hills of Ephraim, let's go up to Yerushalayim. Ki ko amar Hashem, here's the key point, Ranu liYaakov simcha v'tzalu b'rosh goyim, hashmiyu halalu v'imru hosha Hashem et Yisrael, et sherit Yisrael. We have to have joy, we have to sing out in joy. Why? Because God has saved His nation, the remnants of Bnei Israel. So we see specifically the joy here is associated with God's interaction with our lives. And this becomes more pronounced in the next 2 examples. Source number 6 from Zechariah, Rani v'simchi bat Zion ki hineni ba v'shachanti betochech nu Hashem. Joy, sing out for joy, shout for joy, because I am coming and I will dwell in your midst. So not only is God saving us in some sort of external sense, we're talking about dwelling in the midst. And finally, an even closer description, it would seem, in source 7, Rani bat Zion, Hariu Yisrael, Simchi ve'alzi b'chol lev bat Yerushalayim, Hesir Hashem mishpatayich, God has removed, He has swept away your judgment or your enemies, Pina oivech melech Yisrael, Hashem b'kirbech, lo tir'i ra'od. God is in your midst, and therefore you shouldn't be worried about misfortune, any bad things happening to you. It seems clear what the Tana Devei Eliyahu seems to be pointing out is that Rina, the joy that we're talking about tonight, the joy of Slichot, is specifically the joy of discovering God in our midst, of discovering some sort of close, very intimate relationship with God, and being happy because that's happening, because that's something that's available to us, open to us. That seems to be the description. So that's the joy that we're getting at. And again, the question is, so this is all really nice. The Leket Yoshir told us we have to be happy. The Piyut is telling us we have to be happy. We define that joy as the joy of discovering some sort of intimate relationship. But where is that in Slichot? What does that mean? Where is that involved in Slichot? I think the answer is to consider carefully what really the Slichot are. What is the core of the Slichot service? It has a lot of components. It's modeled in an interesting way around a normal tefillah. We have Ashrei at the beginning. There's Kaddish Shalem. There's Aleinu. There's all kinds of things which bracket it as this normal kind of tefillah. At the core of it, though, is the recitation of the Yud Gimel Midot Terachim. We recite the 13 attributes of mercy of God, and that's really the heart of the Slichot service. There's also Vidui, there's also confession, it's pegged on together with Tachnun, but I think the core of it is this recitation of the Yud Gimel Midot. And this idea, why are we doing this? Why do we do this kind of recitation? Because we are told, we have a tradition, that if you do this, if you recite the Yud Gimel Midot, if Bnei Yisrael recite the Yud Gimel Midot, then they'll be forgiven by God. And this is mentioned here in source number 8. Vayavor Hashem al panav v'yikra. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, how do we understand this pasuk, this which describes Hashem revealing himself to Moshe? He passed in front of him and Vayikra, he called out. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ilmale mikra katuv iyafshar le'omro. Were not written like this in the pasuk, we never would have been able to say this. There's a debate about what that means, but that's not important for us. It means that God, in some sense, so to speak, wrapped himself up like a chazan, and he showed Moshe a seder tefillah, an order of prayer. Amar lo, kol zman sheYisrael chotin, yasu lefanai keseder hazeh v'ani mocha lehem. Anytime Bnei Yisrael sin, let them do this seder, this tefillah, and then I will forgive them. The question is, it's referring to this as a seder tefillah. What kind of tefillah is it? When we say the 13 midot harachamim, are we asking for anything? There's no request there. You just say, Hashem, Hashem, Kel Racham L'chanu. We couch it in terms of requests for slicha and so on. But the actual 13 attributes of mercy, just saying them, the text that we have in the Torah, is not a request of anything at all. So why is it called a tefillah? What kind of tefillah is that? A tefillah where you don't ask for anything, you just say stuff about God. What does that mean? Perhaps the idea here is this, that invoking the Yud Gimel Midot, invoking the 13 attributes of mercy, is really a way of trying to access a deep level of the relationship that we have with God. The Yud Gimel Midot are a revelation of himself which God made to us, that he runs the world at an ultimate, at a basic level, with mercy and with kindness. No matter what we've done, we're able to appeal to God for this mercy. But this revelation is something spectacular. This was, in the context in the Torah, the highest level of prophecy that any person has ever accomplished. Moshe Rabbeinu sees God's back, whatever exactly that means, and this level of God's interaction with the world is revealed to him. This is a very intimate moment between Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and by extension between Bnei Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have this relationship with God where we know God to act in this way. That doesn't matter what happens, he has the capacity, he does interact with the world through mercy and through kindness, and he forgives. So really what we're maybe doing when we say the Yud Gimel Midot is not asking for anything, but just making a proclamation. We know you at an intimate level. We have a relationship with you that no other nation in the world has. This is it. We understand that you have these 13 attributes of mercy. And the extension, the implication is, please forgive us as well. So if that's the case, then perhaps this is the joy, the simcha, that we've been talking about this whole time. The rina that we defined from the Tana Devei Eliyahu, the joy of someone discovering God in your midst, is actualized when we recite the 13 attributes of mercy. It's actually very exciting. We have the opportunity to relate to God in this way. Nobody else does. No one else is told they can recite these things and they'll be forgiven. This is a special part of the relationship between God and Bnei Yisrael. So perhaps this is the rina, the joy that we have of discovering God in our midst, and the song, the singing that we do as a result of that. And I would note here that there is then an extended parallel to Shabbos as well. I'll come back to the point that we specifically do this after Shabbos. I noted here just source number 9, one example of this, but the Shabbos, it has a similar characteristic. It's part of the intimate relationship which God and Bnei Yisrael share. Here the Shabbos is described as an oath. It's a sign, Beini uvein Bnei Yisrael, between me and Bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. It's a specific sign, it's a special connotation of the relationship that we have with God that nobody else shares. Non-Jews are not supposed to keep Shabbos. This is specifically a part of the relationship that God and Bnei Yisrael have. And so perhaps that also fits into this notion of coming here to say this after Shabbos, not just the joy of learning and the joy of owning Shabbos, but the parallel between the closeness that's experienced on Shabbos and the closeness that we're invoking here with the 13 attributes of mercy. So in conclusion, this is what we've seen. The Leket Yosher notes that there's a concept of joy that we're supposed to be having. In addition, I would add, I'm not saying it's supposed to override or wipe out the concept of feeling bad about what we've done in the past, of confessing our sins. But in addition to that, there's an excitement and a joy which emerges out of the ability to interact with God at this deep level, to be party to this intimate kind of relationship with the Creator of the world, and to be able to address Him as the one who acts in the world in mercy. And this is pulling, or is parallel to perhaps, the relationship we have with God on Shabbos. So we see that the chassid that we mentioned at the beginning, who had shots of vodka with God, which I'm not saying that that's a good idea, but the idea seems to be the same, a similar notion seems to be at play. We have this deep, intimate relationship with God, and this is part of what we're doing here tonight. When we come to face Him, when we come to reach out and dig deep and try and access this place, this level of our relationship with Him, and know that if we can do this with sincerity, He will embrace us as well in return. Thank you very much.